Hey everybody, welcome to the Filecoin Plus Notary Governance and Community Governance call for July 20th, 2021. We're almost at the solstice, making good progress through the year. And so let's get started. So same agenda. I thought about reversing it based on the feedback from Julian last time around, but this one is not so packed. So I didn't do it this time, but I do think moving forward, we should reverse this so that we're prioritizing issues and anything related to large data set notaries before we get into some of the more status update oriented things, since we end up not always having enough time to have the discussion. Well, anyway, quick updates. Things have started moving a lot more. So in the last 2 weeks, basically, we're up to 8 allocations, which is up 3x from before. But the amount of DataCap flowing out as well is about 10 times as much in a 2-week period. So great to see client applications coming in that are exciting, as well as notaries being able to respond and work with them. And so if you look at the total amount of DataCap that's flowing in the system as well, it's starting to go pretty high, mostly because 4 large data set notaries or multisig notaries have been signed onto the chain, each of which have, I think 2 of them are 5 petabytes, one is at 1.5 petabytes. So 3 are at 5, one is at 1.5, and I think there's another one coming for 0.5, but quite a bit of data cap coming in from the multisigs. And then of that, relatively small proportion. I usually do percentages here. I didn't this time because I think it's not fair to correlate individual notary actions with the multi-sig ones. So this will probably turn into a table unless you folks have feedback on how you'd rather see these updates on a bi-weekly basis. And so in some way, we would probably want to show like what the standard like one notary to client allocation path is looking like from a data cap flow and a usage perspective, and then what it's looking like in the case of a multi-sig notary for a large data set project. The time to data cap is continuing to go down. I think this was the biggest jump I've seen. So usually it goes down about 6 hours or so every governance call. This time it's down more than half a day. It's finally below 4 days, which I don't think I've seen before. I think this is both a combination of, as in the past, like a lot of people using verify.glyph.io, but also in general, like notaries are getting faster. If you look at the average time to first response and time to data cap through a notary, those are also down almost half a day. And so I think we're starting to get a little bit quicker. We definitely want to have the conversation on how we can make the burden on the notaries a little lighter, and we'll talk about that later on in this conversation. But I do want to flag that several of the new completely brand new notaries have not yet really been activated through the app, in that they're not actually getting assigned issues automatically. And to solve that problem, I'm going to also address towards the end of this call. But yeah, looking better. So hopefully, either correlated with elections or anything else. We don't know yet, but if you have any suggestions or ideas on how we can continue bringing this number down, would love to hear it, because it feels like we're trending in the right direction. So that's fantastic. And further corroboration of that is just pulling from the textile repo, which is also tracking at a bigger scale, like what's actually happening in the Filecoin Plus ecosystem. You can see numbers are going down. Where I typically look is how long these 2 numbers are up, like how big they are. And then I also look at, just comparing. So this obviously went down nearly by a factor of half. And then this also went down just slightly less, but it did go down. And this is similar to the time recap that I'm tracking in the dashboard as well. And so good to see movement in the right direction. One thing I did want to ask, if Andrew's here actually, is this like a rolling average kind of a thing over a period of I shouldn't say average. Is this like a rolling window of a period of like N weeks where like you judge the median based on, the last like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or is it, yeah?
Yeah, so nothing sophisticated there. We could do a pull request and give you something more, but right now it's actually only currently open ones.
Okay, cool.
So you can
that
you can kind of tell what the open pool looks like here.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the days to grant is like recently granted or total granted. I
The
think it might be
days
total.
to grant,
The-
that's all granted, but remember, that's going by the tag granted. So maybe worth just doing some like audit there and make sure that everything that's been granted has been tagged.
yeah.
But
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So I think even like when we track numbers at that level, like seeing a movement in those is going to be more difficult because, of course, like we just added, an N of 7 or 8 in the last couple of weeks. And so it's good that we're still able to move the needle. I view
there's
this as a
also
positive.
it's also tracking the history of that. So there's a big CSV that's getting generated in that repo.
Okay.
So every week, I think there's a new row. So at some point, you can chuck that in Excel or whatever and make a nice little graph of that over
Sweet.
time.
Thank you. That's great. I will take a look at that. Sweet. Switching gears into updates on the large dataset notary side of things. So we talked about this second set of points of discussion as a summary in the last governance call, but of course, because of time zones, not everybody's there. The main thing I wanted to retouch was basically what are the expectations of being like a lead notary on a large dataset notary or on a multi-sig notary. The expectation is that like the lead notary is the person who's actually requesting the allocation in GitHub that goes to the app for everybody to use, and is also the person that I assume most notaries will look to or defer to when it comes to ensuring that the client is not doing something bad or wrong or violating basically their own application when it comes to using the large amount of DataCap that they've received. And so I viewed this as like a slightly higher burden. And I was sort of pitching it as like, an additional, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, between 5 to 10 minutes and half an hour per week at most, where you may want to take a quick look at the dashboards for the client to which DataCap is going to. And you may want to ensure that if a client is requesting more DataCap, you're able to follow up and kick off the request so other notaries can sign that onto the chain. But other than that, I think all notaries are sort of equally liable in ensuring that that in general, the clients that are receiving DataCap are the ones that are able to use it, leverage it, and deliver value or to the world in some way, or at least leverage the value of the network in some manner for their particular use case. Hopefully that helps. The reason I'm rehashing this as well is I think a couple of issues don't yet have like a explicit lead notary, even though they have enough notaries to get going. And just a quick reminder, enough here being 7 notaries that spread across at least 3 regions. But yeah, if you are interested in doing that for any of these projects, it would be awesome for you to just nominate yourself in some way or just flag in some way. In the GitHub issue where you say you're willing to be a notary, just also say you're willing to be a lead notary. That would be very helpful. And then the last thing I wanted to flag was support for Slingshot. So this is still an ongoing conversation. I think the general consensus is still trending towards it's kind of up to the notaries. And so there was a lot of conversation last time where I think notaries seem to be focused on the idea that if the clients themselves are guaranteed to not be self-dealing and there's a way that they can verify that, then maybe this is more okay than not. And so the open application that we have is for the 3000 RISE genome data set from Fei Yun. And I don't know if Fei's here today, but in his application, he explicitly says that he will not be making the deals with himself. And so it might be worth taking another look at that application for those of you that are interested in supporting him. Cool. And so quick update is that 4 multi-sig notaries have been signed on the chain. Discover, Estuary, NFT Storage, and TauPaiPai. I do want to flag that there's currently a bug in the bot where when a large data set notary multi-sig's lead notary kicks off the message for an allocation to the client, for some reason it's not showing up in the app correctly. So we realized this yesterday thanks to Julian, and so we're working hard with the team to try and debug like what's actually happening. And so yeah, and then the next thing is that we're awaiting one for root key holder signature, which is the Chengdu digital media industry base. I think they've received one signature. They need the second. That should be coming in the next few days as well. And then there's 8 open applications right now. And so, yeah, I wanted to, per our last conversation, I want to make sure that if there are any clients here from these projects that are interested in sharing more, then we should do that. And so I see in chat that Faye's here. Faye, if you want to plug your project again, then you have the floor. Next 30 seconds to a minute. Go for it. You can also unmute if you prefer.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Select the wrong Mac. My application is one of the earliest application. And right now, 4 notaries have expressed their interest, but I need 3 more. Talking about the incentive from slingshot prizes, in my application, I think it's more benefit to the small miners that I work with, really, because they really need the DataCap to increase their power. And I have records of making deals with multiple miners in the past, and I have provided a CSV listing all the miners I have worked with. They are really diverse and across multiple regions. I believe if I'm granted DataCap, all of them will benefit from it. Yeah, hopefully some notaries today can give me support on that. Also, maybe we can discuss about the rule of notaries once they are sponsoring my project, they cannot receive deals from me. That's some of the concern that they're having. I think if we can hear some words from you, Deep, about that would be great.
About not being able to receive deals?
Yeah, like notaries cannot receive deal that we are sponsoring.
Oh,
has some concern about that, and
this is a really interesting topic, actually. Yeah, we should talk about this one. I think let's definitely talk about this as soon as we see, unless there's any other clients here that want to shed any additional light. Yeah, and also if there's any questions for Charles, please, for Faye. Sorry, I was saying Charles because I'm responding in chat as well. If there's any questions for Faye, please do ask. One question I have is, Faye, in the case of Slingshot, there is always, the chance that if a data set is onboarded a lot, we exclude it from the next phase, for example. So just wanted to ask, like, out of curiosity, like, what is your criteria for which data set you'd want to support? Say the 3K rice genomes is excluded from a future phase. Would you pivot, or would you just come back and reapply for additional DataCap?
Ideally, I can give the flexibility to switch to another DataCap. But if that's not possible, I can ask in the application, maybe I can continue to store with miner, but not claiming any prizes to continue to help the community, or cancel the application, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah, because once I started, sending out more deals isn't such a big deal for me, but it will really continue to help the miners. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, and then well, technically, I now represent the DealBots project, so I can talk a little bit about that. Basically, it's very difficult to track deals that don't succeed because they don't end up on the chain, and so we are looking for ways in which we can get much more accurate, like, reputation and state of truth data about different storage providers on the network. And so the best way to do that is to attempt making deals. And so currently we have, the ability to make deals in powers of 2 from 1 GB up to 64 GB in a fully automated fashion across any list of miners. And we've been running this for the last several weeks because we were doing a bunch of stability testing around version 1.10. And now we're doing this for 1.11 and the new releases that are coming up that have like a lot of big feature changes for the storage provider side of things, like the separation of the different processes in the miner runtime and a couple other things. And so because Filecoin Plus is seen as like the ideal path for a client, and we're trying to replicate the ideal path for a client and test against it constantly. This application is effectively purely just to say, hey, this is what we want to ensure clients can do successfully when they come to the network. So let's replicate their behavior end to end, gather statistics, make those statistics available publicly via a GraphQL like endpoint, so anybody can query them. Let's also push them into reputation systems, so reputation systems can take that data as a much better source of data than just query ask on a bunch of storage providers on the network. And so it's not a very complex use case. It's more just for like very comprehensive testing, performance, end-to-end data collection, end-to-end like flow analysis of what it looks like and feels like to be a client on the network, so that we can generate the right insights that such that clients are successful in their use of Filecoin. Yeah, hopefully, if you have any questions, feel free to ping me. Looks like we already have 2 or 3 notaries in support, so need a few more as well on that one if you think it's worthy of your support. But yeah, let's talk about the topic that Faye flagged. Actually, I think it's a really good topic of conversation. I figured we'd have this conversation later in the call, but we may as well do it now. So Faye, if I understand you correctly, the ask is effectively that some of the miners that you would have stored data with are signers on the multisig, or are also notaries and may be signers on the multisig. And so if they end up signing on the multisig, what are their repercussions for being also a notary and a storage provider? Is that correct? Like they won't be able to take your deals if they sign on to the multisig?
Yes, that's correct. Julian has gave me the concern that he wouldn't receive deals for me if support my application.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's a little nuanced and not so easy there. So I think in the case of a regular allocation, it's very easy to follow this flow, where also because the bar is lower, you can just point, you can point a client and say, ask another notary in the region, or ask literally any other notary. If there's no others in the region, to go get DataCap from somewhere else, because as an individual acting notary and an individual storage provider, you can't be both. In the case of a multi-sig, it gets a little trickier because there's also 6 other notaries that are saying that this client is okay. And so I think that we sort of need to agree as a community if that needs to, like, that kind of that angle needs to change in this case, because yes, I do think that the default understanding that it doesn't get like allocated back to you is a fair default assumption. I think that we have not actually set in stone whether or not we want to never change that or are not comfortable changing that. And so it might be worth having the conversation now if any notaries have opinions around like a threshold, or like, like given that we ask these clients to make deals with several storage providers, we could do something like, hey, like clients have to have a minimum of 5 storage providers that they make deals with. And, one of, at most, any notary that's signing on can receive like 5% of the deals, or like something like that, because it does look like it'll be hard, I think, otherwise. Alternatively, yeah, I'm also, open to sticking with not allowing any self like allocation, because ultimately there are 24 notaries in total. And so getting 7 that aren't ones that you make deals with is probably like a realistic outcome too. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear if there's any opinions on this, especially from notaries that aren't miners. Curious what your take is, but also, of course, notaries that are are also providing the storage of service. What do you think? If you have any questions or want me to clarify my question, please also let me know. But I would love to have a few-minute discussion on this topic because I think it's an important one. Thank you, Faye, for flagging it. Hey, Megan.
Hey, Deep. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that being, with the multi-sig, we have a lot of people who are verifying these clients, and so being looser with letting then people store with those people who had been on the notary but not the lead. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just difficult to track once you get into that with like thresholds and stuff. But anyway, it's difficult to track, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be wiser to have like a per minor like limit or something reasonable along those lines, where it's like you were like, I guess in Faye's case specifically, Faye, because you have like a lot of minors, you could do it as like even if some of the notaries are part of your storage provider pool, you'll distribute your deal such that no one's getting more than 5% or something, and maybe you pitch that as part of your actual application. And so if other notaries are okay with it, then that's fine. And if other notaries are not, then we can adjust and calibrate. But that could be, yeah, I see that in the chat, you're basically saying exactly the same thing. Sorry, if you want to share any additional details, if you had ideas, please take over the mic. Cool. Okay, so Faye's gonna add in that line to his thing and see if that works for the other notaries that are interested in maybe signing or not signing. I did want to also open up the conversation to any other people that had opinions. Quick recap. We're basically discussing if a signer, so if you are a notary that is also a storage provider in the network and you sign on to a large data set notary as one of the seven total signatures, can you get any deals from that client? And so the previous assumption was when you're the only notary, you can't. And so maybe when you're operating in the group, you also should not. And so there's two ways we could look at this, which is we could say continue with that because there's 24 total notaries. Shouldn't be difficult to get 7 signatures that aren't, a particular notary signature. And in the case where it's like Faye, where he's spreading them across many notaries, maybe there's a tolerance, or we make it okay, standardized like across a certain tolerance, like 5% or something with any minor. I think either approach is relatively justifiable. I just want to hear, if there's any other strong opinions on this one. We'll probably talk about it in the next governance call as well to make sure the other half of the notaries that aren't here today can make it. But I think for Faye's specific case, you should just add that to the application and we can talk on GitHub to make sure that you get unblocked. But yeah, in the meanwhile, any other opinions on this, please drop them in chat or feel free to unmute. I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds. Okay, looks like this will be continued on Slack or future call. So, you heard from Faye, which is the 3,000 rights genome for Slingshot. I realize now that he's amended his title to 2.5, and so I should do that in my slide as well. I briefly talked to you about the DealBots project towards the end of that list, but there's 6 other clients that also have extensive applications that I would urge you to just spend, a minute even each, just skim through them, see what you find interesting as a notary that you'd like to support. A lot of these are very compelling and good use cases of the network. And so, yeah, please head over to the large datasets repo, which is, I think, github.com/filecoin-plus-large-datasets, and check out the other open applications and drop your opinion. You don't always have to say yes either. You can just ask helpful questions that you think might be useful in the process of due diligence for us as a community to ensure that we're supporting the right use cases. Cool. We'd also talked about trying to come up with a way in which we could define success for this program. So the current iteration of this multisig based support is constrained to 50 PB in total. We have now allocated 16.5 and are about to, I think, get to 17. And then depending on future projects, that gives us room for plenty more still. But our hope is that we use this as a massive accelerator of the usage of Filecoin, both from like clients getting unblocked and participating on the network, but also could be useful from the perspective of just generally increasing like DataCap liquidity, ensuring that like clients that are receiving it are actually like knowledgeable and able to do stuff with it, and making sure that in general the Filecoin Plus ecosystem is succeeding in its plan to, or its program to make the Filecoin network more productive. But if anybody has any thoughts on how we should better, specifically cater to defining success for this particular program, I'd love to hear them. One of the bullets that I think was a takeaway from last conversation was effectively ensuring that we're also learning stuff from this process as a group, because obviously this is limited to 50 PB. I'm sure once we run out of it, we'll probably want to do something at a similar or larger scale. And so if anyone has ideas on specific things we'd like to talk about as a group or things to track, then now's a great time to share. If not, feel free to share in Slack, GitHub, or in the next call. Yes, go for it, Faye. Take over.
Oh, just want to bring up, when the notary is looking at the application, before giving the support, maybe do more of the research on how this client has done in the past, or what's their background, whether they have been controversies of how they did things in the past before showing the support, things like that. I think Deep also provided a comment in one of the application too.
Yeah.
That's my point. Yeah.
Thanks for the flag, Faye. I think the other thing I wanted to add as well, which I added in the comment, but the due diligence process for these, we explicitly set this as like public, which is that like anybody in the community should participate as well. And so heavy agreement with what Faye said, which is like a lot of these clients have applied for DataCap before. So taking a quick look, like I can find ways to make that easier, or we can look at different ways that it can reduce the friction to do that. But taking a second to basically look at what clients have actually done with previous allocations is an excellent indicator of what they're going to do with future allocations, unless they can show or share specifically otherwise. But also, if you're not a notary, feel free to flag these things or ask questions of the client as well. I think it's important to ensure that these are more like consensus driven, as opposed to like the notary role, which is more sort of like an individual actor that has some amount of power in the system. Yeah, if anybody has ideas here on how we can reduce the burden for due diligence, let me know. If it's maybe it's simple things like just sharing the URL for one of the dashboards or a few of the dashboards where you can see the client activity, but something like that. Cool. Faye, is there anything else you wanted to add about this?
Nope. Just there are so many websites available to tracking the allocations, so it's fairly easy to find out. Yeah.
True. In fact, I sometimes think we need to have less and have just specific places to go to. But yeah, I think just people are aware there's the two dashboards is very, very helpful. Fileplus.info, fantastic site, very good for tracking allocations, and then the one that I'm working on that has a very complex URL, which I've shared in the past, and we'll probably work on changing the URL before trying to spell it out. Cool. I did want to take a quick 2 minutes and just talk about notary onboarding and notary like execution on network. So the first thing I wanted to flag is we had office hour sessions last week. We had 2 different sessions. I recorded the second one. That one was more sort of focused on implementation and tooling. And so I would highly recommend you take a look at that link. that link is available in the Notaries channel on Slack. So make sure you watch that. It basically walks through how you use GitHub plus the Filecoin Plus app in tandem effectively to do your allocations. But the second thing that I wanted to just confirm, so a lot of the new notaries are not yet receiving net new applications, and that's because the metadata that we need from them it needs to be expanded to include the right GitHub IDs. So right now I'm just operating based on adding in the GitHub IDs with which you filed your application. If for some reason that's not the case, some of you have already told me in your applications, and so that's great. So I know the Filecoin Foundation, instead of using Megan's GitHub, will be using Danny's, and then I think Wusu R&D Center is also switching over to using Wood's GitHub ID. And so there's a couple of changes based on just operations of teams. I know other notaries in the past have flagged that they want to make that transition and have not been able to. And some have. So I think XN Matrix switched over to a different account called XN Matrix SV, for example. But little things like that, like I wanted to just make sure I got a snapshot view because I want to do a big update to the app right now. And so if you have a second and your GitHub ID, well, actually, I need you to do this anyway because I don't know which Slack IDs you'd rather have noted. But in the case that you're willing to be reached out to on Slack, which I think almost all of you generally said you were, if you can head over to this tinyurl.com/notaryinfo and just drop your GitHub and Slack ID in, that would be immensely helpful. I'm going to use that to make changes to the metadata in the app later today. If not, I'm going to take my best guess, and we can always correct. It will just take a little bit of lag, but it's definitely correctable. So if you're here and you're a notary, or you're watching this and you're a notary in the future, then ping me. Sorry, if you're watching this in the future, very far into the future, like more than a week, then I would say just ping in the Notary channel if you need to change your metadata. But I will share this link immediately after this as well in the Notary channel. So I'll give everybody a couple of days to edit stuff too if needed. That's the only really like thing left that's like blocking anything. It's not even actually blocking stuff because technically you can get manually assigned applications and you can do stuff with those applications. But this will help tremendously in making things more fluid. And so hopefully lots of new notaries coming on board will be activated very quickly. But yeah, this is the total set of 24 notaries today. Really excited to see the throughput of the system increase substantively as a result. Cool. There was one open issue that was flagged last week. Last call on private data validation, where we talked about ways in which we want to support companies that don't want to share their data. And this is a tricky subject. I think partially because Filecoin Plus is very specifically targeted at this moment, like at least in the short term, towards public data. And so in general, I think most notaries just skew towards supporting data that they can see or data that they know they have the ability to retrieve and confirm. But of course, Filecoin as a network, in order to move forward in the future, has to also be able to support private data. And so we were looking at strategies for the few clients that a notary may get that they're like, oh, this is like a really strong use case, but I can't check that data. What are ways in which you can build trust with that client? And so I think Finn Boucher had a process that they shared in the call. And in general, I think we talked a little bit about like validating both before giving the allocation and after, where before is more about like asking enough questions about what the company and the entity is, what the use case is, and if there's any way in which you can like get additional proof, like maybe there's a website that they're running that they're going to be supporting, or they can send you like sample data with PII taken out. Some way to do that. If there's any ideas, please share. And then after, of course, like watching to see how the client is actually following through on their plans, whether or not they're making deals in the way that you would have expected, and sort of just tracking the off-chain results as well. Like once that data ends on Filecoin, like what's actually happening to it, how's it being used? So yeah, if there's any other ideas on this one, please do share on issue number 195. or right now. If you're here and have any ideas, I'll give you a minute. Cool. And then the second thing I wanted to flag was based on a conversation I had with Meg, who's part of the Notary team at Holon. And so that was basically around like, is there a more optimal time that we can do these governance calls? And so I think one thing that we were throwing around as an idea was like, do we change the time slots such that they're more accessible to everybody? I don't know if these are the optimal time slots. These were just what was picked initially to cater to as much of the initial sort of Filecoin Plus population as possible. But of course, the Filecoin Plus population is changing. There's a lot of new faces coming out on board, a lot of new community members that are participating in shaping the program. And so, yeah, I would love to sort of get an idea on if you think these calls are at a good time or how we can adjust. The other thing that I was thinking about is we currently like have calls every 2 weeks and then we oscillate, right? But what ends up happening is that the state of truth at each call is vastly different. And so I don't know how many notaries end up with the opportunity, or even community members or clients or minors had the opportunity to go watch the recording of the call they couldn't come to if they were interested. And so I was wondering if it's better to do calls that are like, if we do need to cover time zones for sure. So we probably have 2 calls, but maybe we have 2 almost identical topic based calls like the same day. And then we wait like 3 weeks in between calls or something like that, or even 2 weeks if we want that cadence, but something that makes the content more consistent across each session. So people in the community, regardless of which call they dial into, feel like there's a consistent experience and consistent topic of conversation rather than feeling like they can't continue one discussion. But yeah, I would love to hear any feedback, ideas, or suggestions on that.
Yeah, I think one thing we had talked about was maybe having the same meeting with the same topics multiple times in one day, rather than like bouncing the time around. And that might be a way to get more inclusion across the sort of no man's land of Oceania, Asia, and North America.
Yeah, very hard to coordinate across the entire world, of course. Yeah, I definitely think that's one way to go. I think we then need to come up with a cadence that I think works, Megan, that we probably would love to get some insight in from the community in general. Like, is 2 weeks the right cadence, or do we want to do 3 weeks or 1 week? I think the last several weeks it's felt like we would have benefited from faster calls, but that was mostly because of questions around elections and launching the large data set notaries and stuff. But in general, before that, sort of every 2 weeks seemed like a good touch point. So yeah, if anybody has opinions, please feel free to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. So, or maybe we can get a Slack channel like specifically for the selected notary in the first place. So
we actually have that.
But that one, there's like 45 people in that group, so I'm not sure.
I actually, I pruned that. I removed a bunch of people that were no longer notaries or actively as notaries, and then what that is some people have like multiple IDs on their notary teams.
Okay, I see.
And then I added some people that are helping with the bot and support for like the app with GitHub and things like that, and the dashboards and stuff. And so it's actually like pretty correct set of audience at this point in time.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah, I removed a bunch of folks that I don't know how they ended up there. Or, they may have had questions at some point, but that should be a pretty consistent channel at this point, hopefully. If you see anything that we need to adjust, please let me know.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Megan, maybe the answer is we just do a poll in that channel and see what people think.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. The last thing I wanted to touch on is that we have a Filecoin Plus community calendar. But due to popular demand, I'm going to be getting rid of that and replacing it with the overall Filecoin community calendar. And so the overall community calendar has like a bunch of other things as well, but we'll add all the Filecoin Plus events to that. So that if you already follow that, you can. If you don't, then it's a good opportunity for you to get these meetings on your calendar, but also get a lot more other fun stuff that you just become generally aware of, so that we can have more interaction with the rest of the ecosystem and people are aware of when these meetings are happening. And so there might be a change in the Zoom link. I'm doing my best to keep the same one, but if not, there'll probably be like a different link starting in the next call. But I'll definitely drop a message in the Notary channel and update both the associated GitHub issue as well as the GitHub README where this link is present. Yeah, out of curiosity, how many people, like, how do people actually access this link today? Like, how many of you save it to your calendar versus wait for a message in Slack versus something else, like going to GitHub directly? Cool. So we got one in the public calendar. So Faye, that will impact you specifically because you'll have to change which calendar you're subscribing to. Okay, one more on calendar. All right, so yeah, all of you calendar folks are gonna have to change where the root event is coming from. Oh wow, okay, one from memory. Look at that, champion. You better not get tripped up when the daylight savings times hits around the world. Actually, I don't know if you have. Do you have daylight savings times in China? Because I know a lot of countries actually don't do it. But that definitely messed me up once, and I actually missed a governance call several months ago. Yeah, Andrew, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't know if everybody here knows, but we've been working on a novel way to make deals on the Filecoin network that I think is pretty relevant to this group. And so I'd love to actually get feedback from anybody here. So the mechanism that we've been building is an auction feed that miners are connecting to and bidding for deals so that we can kind of move data quickly. We can generate relationships with miners that are having good reputations and able to store data fast. And so this has been running for a while now. We've been testing it with a small group of miners. We're starting to onboard more. And then in an hour and a little bit, we're going to have our first auctions governance call, which is where we're going to start sharing how we're changing the features, how miner selection is happening in auctions. So miners bid, and then there's sort of there's a winning bidder, but we have concepts of bidders, miners getting timeouts if they're becoming too aggressive in their bids and they're winning too much. So those sorts of things. So we're going to have a governance call. It'll be the first of many. And I just wanted to invite anybody here that is interested in this concept to join us. I'll share the link in chat in just a second.
That's awesome. Is that literally at like, I guess like 10 a.m. Pacific then?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. And then would you be recording these, Andrew, as well and sharing them after, or is this like, hey, you got to be there?
We will record them. Let's see how the first one goes. I think we'll share it, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, but okay, we'll see.
The only reason I ask is because there's a couple of people, even in this call, that are staying up very late right now and are probably going to go to bed and might be interested in seeing the output of that.
Yeah, we've had people actually already ask for that. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see how much we get for feedback and probably start scheduling. I mean, I think we already have it on the calendar to recur, but we'll move it so that it bounces so that different time zones can join different times.
Sweet. Maybe if you come up with a better model to address the time zone problem, then we can follow suit too here. So,
yeah. Well, the one thing just to note, the thing that's really sweet about this for Phil Plus is it actually removes a bit of the miner selection from clients. So here it's really a pure economic decision about what miner you're you're sending your data to, and a bit of reputation is what we'll build in there. So I think it's going to have some cool implications here, and we're seeing some really good results. I think
Cool.
I think we're like 100% success rate on deals, for example, and things are moving really quick. So
nice. And then I guess one question for you is, I assume that because you're trying to run this as like almost deals as a service for a client, you're the one that will be applying for DataCap and doing all the KYC for your clients to ensure it's being allocated for like
Yeah.
good use cases. Okay.
Well, no, the answer is yes in the short term. So right now we've applied for DataCap. We have kind of two categories of users. We have blockchain bridges that we've been building. So in these cases, we're aggregating data from many users, firing off deals to get them stored as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then lately we've been doing what we call direct to auction clients. So they're actually just sending payloads for auctions. They get distributed to the feed. Those users are using our address currently, but we have it in the roadmap to enable remote addresses. So they'd actually own their own wallet,
Okay.
do all their deal signing and everything. We just don't have it as a feature yet. It'll take time.
And is that the preferred path, or do you want to support both when that becomes
Both.
available? Okay.
Totally both. Yeah. I think some users are just going to want to manage their own Filecoin, manage their own DataCap and everything. But I think a lot of cases we'll be able to just handle it for them. We can vet the clients, which means that miners know what they're bidding on a bit in advance. Like we're actually going to have metadata about what the deals are containing and all that sort of good stuff. And then we also want to work with miners to make it easy for clients to select the kind of miners that they're storing with. So we're going to start collecting information, obviously on location, but other parameters there. So
Sweet. Awesome. But yeah, if you're waking around, definitely take a look at this nice launch governance call for the auctions. I think you dropped a link in the chat. Cool. The last thing I wanted to flag is also just a reminder to take a look at this FIP, number 116 in the repo for FIPs. This is a really cool idea we talked a little bit about in the previous call. But it was the idea that after you seal the sector, if you decide that deal was worthy of DataCap, you can sort of retroactively assign it or give it DataCap. So a client can go secure DataCap after a deal has been made and the deal has been sealed. And this is primarily to unblock cases where if we want to speed up like data onboarding of specific projects, which we think or have confidence that they'll get supported as verified clients in the future, then this becomes a path for partnering with storage providers sooner, and because it tends to take a while to actually get data over and get it onboarded onto the network. So this could be an interesting way where deal making itself and the like DataCap being a blocker to deal making in some ways is no longer necessarily the case. And so this FIP has some interesting ideas around that. But it also requires a little bit of thinking around like how you structure prices from a miner perspective, or how you deal with block rewards that would have been higher theoretically if the DataCap had come in for the entire duration. And so there's some really interesting ideas that need more opinions. And so if you have a minute, take a look at this issue, give us your thoughts, your ideas to the rest of the community, share them. I think the folks that file the issue are not on the call today, but maybe we can ask them to come talk about it as well at a future governance call. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else anybody wanted to flag? Or we might be setting a record with an actual timely Filecoin Plus governance call. Wow. Cool. So quick reminder, if you're a notary, go to this link, tinyurl.com/notaryinfo right now, if you can, because I'm saving you 3 minutes and this should take you less. And just fill out the 2 columns for your name. And if you're anybody in the community, take a look at the FIP here. And if you're anybody in the community, take a look at the large data set applications for a couple of minutes as well when you get a chance. It's fun accompaniment to your morning coffee break or something. But yeah, take a look at the applications and see, let's continue to work together to find ways to make Filecoin a more productive network for delivering value to people and to use cases that are worthy of it. Cool. Thanks so much for your time, folks. Unless there's anything else in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to call it good, but I will give people 30 seconds in case there's anything else anyone wants to share. If there's any questions for anything that was flagged as well. Oh no, it doesn't work. That's not good. Let me fix that. Oh wow, you're right. It isn't working. Well, thanks for flagging that. Let me see.
You typed the wrong URL in the chat. It should be like notary info.
Oh, I see. You're right. It is notary info. Huh. So the slide has it right. Yeah, this slide has it right. Thank you. There you go. Thank you so much. It's a good call. Sweet. I think I'm going to call it. We're going to call off the recording shortly. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your days, nights, weeks. And I'm sure we'll be running into each other on Slack or GitHub or at the next call. Take care.